moral universe, and all other species are relevant only to the degree that they impact human beings. I would challenge all of us who are not vegetarians to think about what the difference is between eating a cat and a chicken, a pig and a dog. I've been vegan for 22 years. A lot of other people in here are vegan. A lot of people in here are vegetarian. And the latest issue of the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition actually recommends vegetarianism. The issue that just came out, dated like 4 days ago, recommends vegetarianism as the only diet that will help the United States to combat the growing obesity problem, the growing diabetes problem. There is no legitimate medical authority that says that you need to eat meat to survive. American Dietetic Association, even the USDA, the AMA, everybody agrees that a vegetarian and a vegan diet is perfectly healthy. So the only thing you have on the other side is, you might have to worry about your iron level a little bit more, although there's no evidence to support that. If you care about the environment, animals, or the global poor, a vegetarian diet is the only ethical one. Thank you.
Okay. Bruce started out talking about, or mentioned in his first part, about a mercenary relationship, whereby if you're eating meat, you pay somebody to kill the other animal. And he asked us, would you want us to kill the animal? Only the person in the back, right? They raised their hand. And I don't support that position either. But why is there a condition? Why are the conditions for this mercenary relationship possible? I think that where Bruce's argument goes, I think may be awry, in that there is at least a parallel between the market and how you interact with that and some sort of social democratic factor. As if every time you choose not to buy meat, you are supporting an alternative lifestyle. One of my favorite philosophers, Slavoj Žižek, parallels this idea with how he talks about democracy, where he talks about, quote, the predominant liberal notion of democracy also deals with those excluded. In this sense, perhaps, excluded, but in a radically different mode. It focuses on their inclusion as minority voices. All positions should be heard, all interests taken into account, the human rights of everyone guaranteed, all ways of life, culture and practices respected, and so on. The conception of this democracy, the protection of all kinds of minorities, cultural, religious, sexual, etc. The formula of democracy here consists of patient negotiation and compromise. What gets lost in this is the position of universality embodied and excluded. So what does this have to do with it? A lot of philosophical thought. So going off of another one of my favorite philosophers, Soren Kierkegaard, he describes the ethical as the universal, and as such it applies to all persons at all times. So if we are to take your position that eating meat is wrong, that it is the ethical, that it should be the universal, who is then the excluded? And I see the excluded as being those who do not have access to the dietary, or the means of being able to choose their own diet. If you're familiar with the film Food Inc., they show a family of four where where both parents work low-income jobs, the father has diabetes, and it's just cheaper for them to go and buy a McDonald's Happy Meal to feed themselves in the morning than it is to go try and buy apples at the local grocery store. There's also possibly the inefficient access within the market, so to speak. I realized when I was going to 7-Eleven to pick up some beer the other day that they had food stamps accepted here. And I was like, well, isn't that strange that 7-Eleven would accept food stamps? So if you're living off of food stamps and you're worried about caloric intake or possibly something like that, one of those lines, I mean, a $2 chicken taquito sounds pretty damn good. So this other group, these excluded, this marginalized group, how do we incorporate them into the ethical? I think that this idea that if we move towards a democracy in the marketplace, it'll help things out. I think this is possibly even a crisis. As a professor here, Gopal Balakrishnan, says in his paper, Speculation on the Stationary State, the hope present crisis, he's talking about financialism, but I think it'll parallel nicely. I hope that the present crisis might facilitate transition to green capitalism may be equally unfounded. While stagnation itself could possibly slow down an ongoing headlong deterioration of natural environments, a shift to alternative energy and green technology, also possibly a vegetarian, vegan, food industrial complex, would most certainly be undermined by the reduction in the price of fossil fuels, in this case possibly meat, that would result from the protracted slump. Overcoming these disincentives, the public commitments of leading states could of course be shifted to alternative fuels, green technology, vegan, alternative food industrial complexes, by politics rationally oriented towards the long term. But at present it seems unlikely that such a politics could also be harnessed to a narrow project of capitalist restoration. The scale of public support for sufficiently remedial measures would overstep these bounds, and therefore be resisted very strenuously, unless precipitous deterioration exposed socially relevant populations to emergency conditions. However determined these efforts in conservation and sustainability eventually become, the ecological impasse of capitalism is likely to be the most absolute of all. The meat industry is one of the most heavily subsidized. Can we not expect something like a aggressive subsidization or resubsidization of the meat industry to prop itself up against a consumer-based like backlash, like, oh, we want vegetarian, vegan options. Perhaps they can even start driving up those prices more, and lower meat to the point where we're all being proletarianized in the Marxist sense. Thank you. Do we have questions now? Questions?
And now you have a 2-minute cross-examination.
Okay. First question. Okay, so segueing into the next question. I'd like to know some of your thoughts on possibly preventing a scenario like Monsanto, preventing an industry like Monsanto from coming to prominence in a new food industrial complex.
I mean, are people familiar with what Monsanto is doing? Monsanto is the biotech company in St. Louis that is patenting. Basically, they've got potatoes where every gene of the potato kills the potato beetle. So literally every gene of the potato that you're eating is a pesticide. They've got these killer seeds, these what they call terminator seeds, where for the first time in the history of humanity, suddenly seeds don't reproduce themselves. And they lock farmers into these contracts through these terminator seeds, whereby farmers have to rebuy their seeds year after year. And the real kicker, like the really great thing, well, great in a really darkly, oh my God kind of sense, is that when there's a field of Monsanto's, Terminator tomatoes next to a field of organic tomatoes, and the Terminator seeds go over there and procreate with the natural seeds, they kill the natural seeds. And as if that weren't bad enough, then Monsanto sues for patent infringement because suddenly Monsanto seeds are being planted in a field that isn't theirs. So Monsanto is really corporate nefariousness at, like, George Orwell couldn't have made this shit up, seriously. And what we do about Monsanto, I mean, I think we need the agriculture industry not to own Congress. I mean, what we do about Monsanto is the same thing that we do about the pharmaceutical companies. It's the same thing that we do about Wall Street. We need proportional representation in this country. We need not winner-take-all balloting. I can't remember what it's called, but where you vote for your first, second, and third choice, and if your first choice doesn't win, then it goes to your third choice, and so on, so that we can have voices like Ralph Nader's in the field, and he doesn't become a spoiler. A lot of countries have a situation where if you had voted for Nader first and Gore second, your voice would have been counted for Nader, but Gore wouldn't have had your vote taken away. So there are an awful lot of ways that we could implement democracy that I think would help to beat back Monsanto and their elk. My first question for you is: can you? I could not understand what the last thing was that you were saying about.
Okay.
So it sounded like you were saying ominous vegan industrialized complex, but I couldn't follow.
I was trying to basically delineate that the fight for more vegetarian options, for not eating meat, should be not seen as an existential problem, like, oh, I choose to buy this product and choose not to buy that, because for this audience, who I assume we all have the choice to choose what we want to eat, it is an existential question.